The topic for today's video is going to be Alec Baldwin, or if you've seen Team America, it's Alec Baldwin. I'm going to editorialize for a moment. I think Alec Baldwin is a piece of human garbage. He is an uneducated elite who doesn't know what he's talking about, but that does not stop him from opening his mouth. I can't stand him. I think I've said enough about that. There was an incident that happened recently that, without a doubt, everybody is well aware of. He was on set of a movie and he shot and killed somebody while he was acting. I can't help, everyone's kind of pointing out the irony of his stance on guns and stuff like that. I understand that everybody's having a good time ridiculing him about this. I myself took part in a little bit of the ridicule, sharing some of his previous thoughts, or at least some memes that I thought were funny. It's an absolute tragedy what happened, but I still think it's okay. I mean, we do this too, in light of tragic events, to at least try to have some kind of sense of humor about it. And I get that. Something that has begun to happen that is kind of confusing, but maybe not confusing, but it's also something that highlights a problem with our society, is all of these people who are rushing out there saying that he needs to be charged with either homicide, reckless homicide, manslaughter. Everyone's throwing about all these terms. All of a sudden, everybody is a legal expert, which kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. Some of the more unique things that I've seen put out there is that if this was a police officer, he'd be fired and he'd be put in jail immediately. Why isn't Alec Baldwin being put in jail immediately? Well, because what Alec Baldwin did is something very different. What happened on that movie set with Alec Baldwin and his movie director and assistant director, whatever it was, is a horrible incident, and it needs to be looked into, and it needs to be looked into deeply. But this rush to criminally charge him is a little bit absurd, if you ask me. I guess to tag team onto what I said in the beginning, I can't stand him. I think he's a vile human being. But that's not who we are. That's not what the police do. We don't just say, hey, I don't like that person, so I'm going to start charging them with every crime that I can. As a matter of fact, that's what the police are being accused of doing. And I think it's funny that there's a lot of people screaming for the police to do that. It's like, you can't have it both ways, folks. Either you want the police to be non-biased, non-partial, look at the facts and judge things based on the facts, or you want them to just go, hey, I hate that person, so you need to get him out of my face, put him in jail, lock him away forever. It just doesn't work that way. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot of is people are acting like Alec Baldwin was on a shooting range, or that he was handling a firearm that, like he was somebody in their house. He was on a movie set firing what he believed was a prop. And some of the things I've seen about that are kind of funny, and some people, even as prestigious as Tim Kennedy, he made a post where, he put like the rules of range safety: never point a weapon at something you don't intend to destroy, know what's behind your target, know your target, like all this kind of crap. Well, I'm sorry, but he had no reason to believe that he was firing a live round out of that gun. Nobody on that set believed he was firing a live round out of that gun. I'm not even quite sure if it was a live round. I've heard different accounts that it was a blank, and that the wadding in the round fired and penetrated somebody, which is certainly possible. It also very well could have been a live round, which there's a lot of things that go into that. Needless to say, there was a mistake that was made. There was not just one mistake that was made, but there was a bunch of mistakes that were made, and everybody who was part of that process needs to be needs to reevaluate what they're doing, because an innocent person died because of what happened. Then does that make it a criminal thing? No, it doesn't. One thing, well, like, everyone's saying, he was the one that held the weapon last. He should be held responsible for it. It's his responsibility to know what was in that weapon. Well, I would like to present to you some other facts from other situations that might counteract that sentiment. And one of those being, I just know that from my own training in the military and now as a police officer, like if in the military, if we were firing blanks, we would get these giant cans of blanks and we would load up hundreds and hundreds of magazines. We'd have belts of blank ammo. We'd put blank adapters on our weapons. And then once that was all done, we'd go out to the field and we would start shooting, and we'd shoot at each other. So this whole thing of like, you never point a weapon at something you don't intend to destroy. I have done that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times. I've pointed my weapon at another person and I did not intend to destroy that person because I was firing blanks. Now, if something had happened in that supply chain, or if someone had somehow slipped a live round into one of my mags, or if somebody was dumping all the rounds out of their mags and left a live one in there, and then that somehow got into my weapon, if I'm the one that fired that round, am I the one that's supposed to be held accountable for that? Should I go to jail because somebody in a huge chain of events made a mistake and I was the one that fired the weapon, so it's my fault? I don't believe in that. I can also tell you that right now, as a police officer, when I go to training, we go to training multiple times a year. We leave all of our guns and stuff in lockers, and we wear our gun belts. They search us. They make sure that we didn't bring any live ammunition with us, any magazines that had live ammunition. And then when you go for a training scenario, they hand you a gun, and it's a real gun. It just has some adaptations made to it so that it shouldn't be able to fire real bullets. And they put these, I forget what they call them, like squib rounds, or they're not squibs. These little Simunitions, that's what they're called. It basically fires a piece of plastic, and in that piece of plastic is like a waxy material, somewhat like lipstick, so that when you hit something, the plastic expands and the stuff squirts out, so you can know that you've hit somebody. And we fire those at each other. I've been hitting with those. We have to wear like paintball gear when we wear those. If you're not wearing long sleeves and you get hit with a sim round, it hurts like hell. But one of the things that they do in the scenarios to make them not necessarily more realistic, but to teach you how to work on your feet, is they'll load the magazines with different numbers of rounds. So I'll walk up to the table, and one of the training personnel will take my gun with the adapter on it, put the magazine in, put a round in the chamber, and hand me back a gun that's live with training ammunition. Then they'll also hand me a mag or 2 mags, and I'll put those in my pouch. Then when I go into a scenario, I might draw my weapon and try to fire, and it turns out that they actually didn't put any rounds in that magazine. So then I have to be able to think on my feet, drop that mag, put a new mag in, chamber around, start shooting. Sometimes they might only put 2 rounds in. Sometimes they put 2 rounds plus a dummy and then 3 more rounds. So you have to go through all of your training stuff. That is all done while we are actually pointing our guns at each other, intending to hit each other. That's how that works. And then the other thing that is confusing to me about people making these comments, they're like, why was he pointing the gun at the director? I keep hearing that a lot. I'm assuming, like, I don't have a director, so I don't have anyone behind my camera. But if you were a movie director and you wanted to see exactly what the camera sees, the best place for you to be is directly behind that camera. And for the most dramatic effect in a movie, we've all seen this. The actor, the camera might be set up to be the perspective of, say, a bad guy. And then the actor points his gun directly at that bad guy? Well, he's pointing it directly at a camera. He's not pointing it at a bad guy. So directly behind that camera is the director, because he wants to look down and see what the camera is seeing, because he wants to get the best eye for what's going on and how his movie is going to look. So Alec Baldwin raises his weapon, points it directly at the camera. He's not aiming. He's just kind of pointing it up in that direction because he's an actor and he doesn't know what he's doing. Pulls the trigger, gun goes off, person behind the camera gets struck. At the end of the day, it's a tragic accident. It's something that happens. We have accidents every day, and you don't necessarily need to charge someone just because there was a tragic accident. The scenario that I want to leave you with is, this is something I've responded to probably a dozen times in 10 years as a police officer. This situation is one where people, it's where parents bring a young child home from the hospital, might be less than a couple months old. They're sleeping with that child in their bed rather than in a crib like the child's supposed to be. And they roll over and suffocate that child when they're asleep. I've seen more than my fair share of those. It's probably the hardest thing that we've ever done. I remember one of the first ones that I had, my daughter was born when I was on coaching. And then I'd only been on the apartment for like 6 months. And we responded to one of those calls where there was a baby the same size as my baby. And someone had rolled over on it. And we were performing CPR on this baby. And we knew it was not going to survive. And we knew exactly what had happened. The parents were sleeping together, and one of them had rolled over, laid on top of this child, and suffocated it. And it might have been hours before they realized what they'd done. Before making this video, I even sent a text to one of my friends who's a retired homicide detective to confirm my suspicion. And even in those situations, we rarely, almost never, and in the 10 years that I've been on and the dozens of these that I've had to deal with, I've never seen a parent who is charged in that situation. Without a doubt, no one is responsible for that death except for the parent who didn't put their child in a crib, let them sleep with them, and then they killed their own child. Without a doubt, they're responsible for that. But we almost never charge them in that situation. There's accidents that happen. There's going to be tragedies that happen in our society. They don't always require criminal charges. So those are my thoughts on that situation. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.